Okay, so let's dive into one of the absolute toughest decisions we all face. What do you do about that person? You know the one you just can't trust. Do you try to talk it out, or do you just walk away and get ready for a fight? We're going to break down that exact dilemma. I mean, we've all been there, right? You've got that boss who's constantly undermining you, or maybe it's a family member whose words just, still sting, or a partner who completely broke your trust. These conflicts, they're universal, and man, can they tie us up in knots. But here's the twist, and this is really the core of what we're exploring today. This source material for this whole explainer argues that the real, exhausting, draining battle, it's not actually with them. It's happening right inside our own heads. Which brings us right to our first section, the devil you know. This is all about that internal war. The one that, let's be honest, can feel way more draining than the actual conflict itself. And this slide just nails that exhausting internal loop, doesn't it? We start weighing our options, asking ourselves, am I a total pushover if I talk to them? But then we worry, but what if I ignore it and this thing just blows up? And then we second guess everything. Am I selling out my own principles by even engaging with this person? This is that cycle that just leaves us feeling totally drained and completely stuck. So how do we usually react when we're in that loop? Well, that leads us right into our next section, the instinctive trap. Turns out our gut reactions, the ones that feel so strong and decisive in the moment, are often the very things that keep us trapped. We tend to fall into one of two extremes. On one side, you've got avoidance. You just ignore the whole messy situation and pray it goes away. And on the other side, moral rigidity. You build up this huge wall and declare, I will never deal with someone like that. Both of these feel like you're taking a stand, right? They feel like self-respect. But the reality, it's way different. There's a huge hidden cost. These instinctive traps, they don't actually solve a thing. In fact, they lead to longer conflicts, more damage to relationships, tons of lost opportunities, and that quiet, nagging regret that just sits with you. All that energy spent, but zero clarity. And this brings us to the real heart of the issue in our third section, emotion versus outcome. This is about the fundamental reason we get so stuck in these painful cycles. And here it is. This is the crucial point from our source material. Moral outrage can block rational judgment. That feeling of being so deeply wronged, that righteous anger, it's so powerful that it completely short-circuits our ability to think clearly about what we actually want. It might feel good to be angry, but you know what? Anger isn't a strategy. When we let that outrage drive us straight into avoidance, we start racking up what our source calls emotional debt, and it's a perfect name for it. It's all these hidden costs, the mental fatigue from replaying arguments over and over, the chronic stress, the bitterness that just builds up. Avoidance doesn't solve the problem, it just puts it on an emotional credit card with insane interest rates. But here's the really good news. This problem, it isn't a character flaw. You're not weak or indecisive. You're just trying to solve a complex problem without the right tools. You're simply missing a decision framework. Which brings us to our fourth section and the solution we've been building towards, the clarity framework. This is a structured way of thinking that helps us replace that reactive emotion with a strategic choice. So where do we usually go wrong? Well, we get stuck on this question right here. Is this person good or bad? We try to be the judge and jury to make a final moral judgment, but that just keeps us locked in that cycle of outrage. It's a completely unhelpful question. So the framework asks us to throw that question out and replace it with a much more powerful, much more strategic one. What action produces the best outcome for me with the least long-term damage? See the shift? It's not about judging them anymore. It's about securing your best outcome. So how do we actually put this into practice? It really boils down to 3 simple steps you see right here. Number 1, pause. Just resist that initial urge to either fight or run away. Number 2, separate your emotion from your desired outcome. And number 3, define what winning actually is. Ask yourself, what does winning truly look like in this situation? Is it getting revenge, or is it finding peace? Is it proving you're right, or is it just being able to move on? This one simple shift, it reframes everything. The goal is no longer to get them to agree with you or to fix the messy conflict. The goal is for you to get back in the driver's seat of your own decision-making so you can make a choice that you can live with peacefully. All right, let's wrap this all up in our final section, your wisest choice. This is where we bring it all together and talk about what it really means to take back control. And here it is, the core belief that ties this entire framework together. Refusing to negotiate is not strength. It's often unexamined emotion. Real strength isn't found in being rigid or proud. It's found in having the clarity to choose the wisest path forward for yourself, even when it's really, really hard. So the final question I'll leave you with is this. If your emotions are the things deciding whether you fight or you talk, then who is really in control? Is it the wisest version of you making that choice? Or is it just the emotion of the moment? That's definitely something worth thinking about. All right, let's just dive right in. Today we are talking about something huge, something that trips up almost everyone. I'm talking about the negotiation trap. We're going to figure out exactly when to talk, and maybe more importantly, when to just walk. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever been in a situation, a conversation, a disagreement, and you just felt completely powerless? You know that feeling like you're stuck and the other person is holding all the cards. I'm willing to bet you have. It happens all the time. Maybe it's that coworker who, like clockwork, takes credit for your best work. Or, that friend who's a master manipulator. And, oh man, this is a tough one. That family member who weaponizes guilt to get exactly what they want. This isn't just some business school hypothetical, this is real life stuff. And when this stuff happens, what's the first thing everyone says? You know it. It's always this. Let's just talk it out. It sounds so mature, so reasonable, right? It's our go-to solution for basically any problem. Okay, but here's the truth bomb we need to talk about. That super well-intentioned advice, more often than not, it's a trap, a really, really dangerous one. So let's really get into this first big idea, what I'm calling the just talk trap. Okay, so this is where we get it all wrong. We constantly confuse simple communication with actual strategy. Look at this. Communication is all about good vibes and hoping for fairness. It's driven by emotion. But strategy? No. Strategy is about having a plan, preparing for what's real, and being totally focused on the outcome. These are not the same thing, not even close. So what happens when you fall into that trap, when you communicate without a strategy? Well, it's not good. You basically end up just giving away all your power. And here's exactly how it backfires. This is so important. When you just rush to talk it out with zero prep, you give away three massive things. First, you give them legitimacy just by showing up to the table. Second, you give away your time, a resource you will never, ever get back. And maybe worst of all, you give away your leverage, your actual power to get what you want. And man, this quote just nails the feeling. It says, without alternatives, you're trapped. You negotiate not from power, but from desperation. You're literally signaling to the other person, I've got nowhere else to go. And that is the absolute weakest place to be. But look, it doesn't have to be like this. There is a way out. And it all comes down to understanding your secret weapon, a little something called BATNA. So this is the million-dollar question, right? How do you flip the script? How do you stop negotiating from desperation and actually start taking back control? Here we go. BATNA. It stands for your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Now, this is way more than just a fancy acronym. It's a complete shift in how you think. Your real power doesn't come from what you might get in the negotiation. Your power comes from having a rock-solid plan for what you're going to do if you stand up and walk away. That single idea changes the entire game. Okay, so how do we build this power? Let's get tactical. Here's the playbook. 4 steps to turn this idea into a real-world advantage. All right, let's break it down. Step 1, and listen up because this is the most important one. Strengthen your alternatives first. Build your BATNA before you even think about talking. Step 2, you control the timing. You pick the when and the where. Don't ever let them rush you. Step 3, know your boundaries. Decide on your non-negotiables, your walkaway points, way in advance. And finally, step 4, get your emotions out of the driver's seat. Treat this like a calculated move, not an emotional reaction. So what happens when you start using this playbook? The whole dynamic just flips. You stop operating on hope, and you start operating from a position of actual, tangible power. I mean, just look at the difference here. This is the payoff. Before, it's all just hope-based talk. You're making emotional concessions. You're second-guessing every move. It feels like a trap. But afterward, you're having strategic conversations. You have calm boundaries, clear leverage. The negotiation stops being a trap, and it becomes what it's supposed to be, a tool that you control. And it really all boils down to this one simple idea, a really powerful quote. You don't negotiate to be nice. You negotiate to improve your outcome. Look, being prepared isn't about being mean. It's about being smart. It's about respecting yourself enough to protect your own interests. So the ultimate lesson here is this. Mastery isn't about winning an argument or being the loudest person in the room. It's when your strategy is guiding the decision and your emotions are just along for the ride. And that leaves us with one final thought to take with you. Think about that next tough conversation you've got coming up. Your next negotiation. Are you just going to try to talk it out? Or are you going to be prepared? All right, today we are tackling a question that could literally save your career, your relationships, and maybe, most importantly, your sanity. When is it actually smarter to just walk away than to keep on fighting? You know, we're always told that compromise is key, that good, reasonable people talk things out. But what if that's, well, a lie? Or at least only half the truth? We're going to talk about the wisdom of refusal, the incredible power of knowing when to say no to a negotiation, and why it might just be the most strategic move you can ever make. I want you to picture this for a second. You're in a meeting, a family argument, some kind of tense conversation. You're doing your best to be the reasonable one. You're laying out facts, you're offering solutions, but it feels like you're talking to a brick wall. Every single idea gets shot down. Every compromise is just ignored, and you can physically feel your energy just draining away. Your patience is gone, and this cold, creeping dread starts to wash over you. You start questioning yourself, right? Am I going crazy? Am I the one being unreasonable here? If you have ever felt that soul-crushing exhaustion, you're in the right place. This is for you. So let's start with this idea we're calling the negotiation trap. And look, this isn't just about a bad meeting, it's like a psychological vortex. It has this powerful, almost magnetic pull to just keep trying, to keep compromising, even when your gut is screaming at you that this is a bad idea. It whispers in your ear, hey, if you just try a little harder, maybe find the perfect words, or give up just one more thing, you'll finally get that breakthrough. But as we're about to see, the cost of getting sucked into this trap is so much bigger than just a few wasted hours. They're hidden, they're sneaky, and they can drain the life right out of you. So why on earth do we fall into this trap, even when we know it's hurting us? Well, it's because it uses our own best intentions against us. First up, there's the guilt. I mean, we're taught from day one that playing nice and finding common ground are what mature adults do. So the moment you even think about walking away, your brain flags it as a personal failure. You feel like you're the one being difficult. Then, of course, the fear kicks in, the fear of what happens next. If I draw a line in the sand, are they going to explode? Is it going to make everything 10 times worse? And finally, you're just paralyzed by the anxiety of making the wrong choice, which leads you down that endless, painful rabbit hole of what-ifs. It's this toxic cocktail of emotions that keeps us stuck, miserable, and way too compliant. And let's be crystal clear, this isn't some abstract corporate theory. This is real life. This is that manipulative boss who gives you super vague feedback and just keeps moving the goalposts, making sure you're always feeling off balance and desperate for their approval. It's that toxic family member who could teach a college course on twisting every conversation, making you feel responsible for their happiness and their problems. Or maybe it's that draining friendship where you are the only one putting in any effort, the only one making concessions, until you wake up and realize you're not in a partnership anymore. You're just a resource being used up. These are the battlegrounds where the negotiation trap claims its victims every single day. So what's the real cost here? It's your most precious, non-renewable resource, your mental energy. Think about this. A staggering 60% of it is consumed by endless second-guessing. That's that little voice in your head replaying every conversation, every email, just obsessing over what you could have said or should have done differently. Another 30% is just burned up by pure mental exhaustion, the sheer fatigue that comes from constantly walking on eggshells. So what's left for your actual life? A tiny 10%. 10% for your career, your real friends, your health, your own goals. This isn't just inefficient, it's a slow-motion burnout. It's basically letting someone else live rent-free in your head and then letting them completely trash the place. Okay, so if the cost is so unbelievably high, why do we stay stuck? Why do we keep feeding the machine that's grinding us into dust? Well, that brings us to a really counterintuitive idea. In some situations, your good faith, your fundamental decency, your willingness to be a reasonable human being might be the very thing that's causing the problem. What if the tools you think you're using to solve the conflict are actually the fuel that's keeping the fire burning? This is what we're calling the truth about fighting. Here is the hard truth, the one that changes the entire game. You're walking into a situation thinking you're playing chess, a game of strategy with shared rules and a mutual goal of reaching an outcome. But the other person, they've thrown the board on the floor and are just trying to hit you with the pieces. They are playing a completely different game. You're trying to build a bridge, but they're secretly planning to blow it up the second you get to the other side. Some people do not see negotiation as a path to agreement. They see it as a weapon for exploitation. They will delay, they will confuse, they will gaslight, and they will masterfully use your goodwill against you until you are just too tired to fight back. Their goal isn't to meet you halfway. Their goal is to win. And this right here, this brings us to the single most important idea in this entire explainer. I want you to burn this into your brain. Let it be the shield you carry into every interaction from now on. Refusing to negotiate is not aggression, it's self-protection. Just let that sink in for a second. All that guilt, all the fear, all the anxiety we talked about, it all comes from the false idea that refusal is an act of hostility. But this insight flips the whole script. When you're dealing with someone who's just trying to exploit you, walking away isn't an attack. It is a calculated, strategic act of self-defense. It's you protecting your energy, your boundaries, and your sanity. It's pulling your troops back to defend your own kingdom. Okay, so if refusal can be such a powerful strategy, how do we actually do it the right way? How do we make sure we're not just lashing out in a moment of anger, which, let's be honest, can often backfire? That's what this next section is all about. We are going to build a framework for refusal, a system that transforms it from a messy, emotional reaction into a clear, deliberate, and powerfully strategic choice. This is where you take back control. Now look, this isn't just me talking here. These ideas are heavily influenced by the groundbreaking work of Robert Mnookin, a negotiation expert from Harvard Law School. And his research is a total game changer because it reveals something powerful. The decision not to negotiate isn't just an emotional outburst. When you do it right, it is a completely rational, totally ethical, and highly strategic move. It's about having a system, a mental model that cuts through all that emotional fog and guides you to the right answer for the right reasons. This is your secret weapon. And not system. It can be boiled down to this simple 3-step checklist. This is your pre-flight check before you make a move. First, analyze the situation with a cold, hard look at the facts. Ignore their words. Look at their patterns of behavior. Is there a history of them exploiting people? Do they say one thing and then do another? Write it all down. Get it out of your head and onto paper. Second, consult someone you trust. A friend, a mentor, a therapist. Someone who is outside the emotional vortex and can give you an objective take. Just ask them, hey, am I seeing this clearly? And third, and this is absolutely crucial, you have to soberly weigh the costs. Not just the potential cost of walking away, but the guaranteed, soul-crushing cost of staying stuck in that trap. You see, the whole point of this framework is to pull you out of the emotional driver's seat. Your anger, your frustration, those feelings are totally valid signals. They're like the check engine light on your dashboard telling you something is seriously wrong. But they shouldn't be the ones steering the car. By using this checklist, your final choice becomes deliberate, calculated, and defensible. It's the huge difference between slamming the door in a fit of rage and calmly, quietly locking it from your side because you know it's the safest, smartest thing you can do. One is chaos, the other is control. Now, when you start using a framework like this, when you shift from just reacting to actually choosing, something incredible happens. You move from a state of constant, draining chaos to one of profound, empowering clarity. This next part is all about the incredible transformation that happens when you finally stop second-guessing yourself and you start truly owning your decisions. So think about it. Before you have a structure, your life is probably a blur of endless self-doubt, where you're just constantly replaying conversations in your head. Your days are defined by these wild emotional swings, totally dictated by the other person's mood. You're living in reactive mode, always putting out fires. But after you implement this structure, you gain clear choice ownership. You stand by your decisions because you know they're based on solid reasoning, not just some fleeting emotion. And this creates a deep confidence in your actions. Best of all, you free up all that wasted mental energy so you can finally have a strategic focus on what really matters, your goals, your peace of mind, your life. The outcome of this whole process, the superpower that you gain, is something we can call decision discipline. And this isn't just about making one good choice. It's the ongoing act of committing to that choice. It means you've set your boundaries, you've made your call, and now you consciously end the internal debate. You shut down that courtroom of second guessing that used to run 24/7 in your mind because you trust the process that got you to this point. This discipline is a muscle, and building it is the key to unlocking that lasting peace and clarity you've been searching for. So how do you start building this muscle? How do you actually cultivate decision discipline in your own life? Like starting right now. That's what our final section is all about. We're going to boil everything we've talked about down into a simple 4-step game plan. This is your playbook for mental relief and lasting clarity. All right, here it is, your path to peace. Step 1, acceptance. You have to internalize, deep down in your bones, the hard truth that some conflicts just cannot be negotiated in good faith. Stop trying to reason with the unreasonable. Step 2, plan for the consequences. Game it out. If you refuse, what are the 3 most likely things that could happen? What will you do in each scenario? This prep work turns that fear of the unknown into a manageable risk. Step 3, define your rules and boundaries with absolute clarity. Write them down. I will no longer engage in circular arguments. I will not respond to passive-aggressive emails. These are your new terms of engagement. And finally, step 4, act. Once the choice is made, based on your calm analysis, you act with quiet confidence. No hesitation, no over-explaining, and no apologies. You're not throwing a tantrum. You are executing a well-thought-out strategy. And as you start to walk this path, please remember this. You are not alone. This struggle is a fundamental, timeless part of being a human. It's been faced by world leaders deciding the fate of nations, by CEOs in billion-dollar deals, and by millions of people, just like you, trying to navigate a difficult relationship at work or at home. Realizing that this is a shared human struggle is incredibly empowering. It's not a sign of your personal failure. It's a sign that you're human, facing one of life's toughest challenges. And so we land here, at the core belief that ties all of this together. Real wisdom in conflict and in life isn't about becoming some master negotiator who can charm anyone into an agreement. That's a myth. True wisdom is having the discernment, the clarity, and the courage to know when negotiation is the right tool for the job, and when it's time to put that tool down and calmly walk away. So, I'll leave you with this final question. You now have a framework to separate all that emotional noise from the strategic signal. You have a powerful new way to look at refusal, not as aggression, but as protection. So, what are you going to do with that clarity? What difficult conversation are you going to see differently tonight? What choice that has been draining you for months will you finally feel empowered to make now that you know strategy, not just chaotic emotion, can guide your action?
I hope you found this video enjoyable and informative. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more amazing content just like this.